Hello everybody, this is Ari in the Air. Welcome back to the channel. Stoked you're here. Today, I've talked a lot about SIV. This video that I made with Gavin McClure, we talk about SIV, we talk about safety, and there's kind of a lot of misconceptions around SIV, who should do it, when they should do it, what they should learn, whether or not they give all of their pilot in commandness over to their instructor, all these different things. And at the Paragliding Academy, we've got Kris Holub, who's our Dean of SIV and Acrobatics, and he's got some dissenting opinions as well about what he calls the full stall propaganda. There's a lot of information out there and a lot of kind of promises about what learning full stalls will do for your flying. Kris and I are going to dig into that today, and we're going to set the record straight, okay? You guys ready? Here we go.
See ya.
Okay, hello everyone. This is Ari in the Air with the Paragliding Academy. Today, I'm bringing you Kris Holub, the Dean of Acrobatics and SIV here at the Paragliding Academy. And today we want to talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions that get thrown around with SIV and particularly around full stalls. Kris, let me know.
Oh, you just want me to jump right in?
Just jump right in. Just tell me.
All right. So I've had this little, wouldn't quite call it a rant, but sort of,
I would.
Okay, call it a rant that I've affectionately nicknamed stall propaganda. And what stall propaganda in my mind is I've seen people have a inaccurate idea of how important full stalls is, what they're going to get out of it, how they should prioritize it, and just this sort of mythology surrounding the maneuver. And so I think, to give them credit, I think it's great that people have been pushing maneuvers and, pushing this glider control stuff. And I'm not saying that full stalls are bad. It's a super important maneuver. If you're going to progress into acrobatics or you're going to fly high aspect ratio gliders or something like that, it is something you need to learn. But people have this idea that they're going to learn the full stall and they're going to have this magic reset button and they can just like control delete their glider whenever they want and they can fix anything. And like, it's the top tier of SIV and Acro training. And if they get that, they're golden. So I've seen people, they like go to SIV and they can barely spiral. And they're like, I want to learn full stalls on my like Xeno. And, it's a shit show. They like are wildly out of control. A lot of times they, get twisted and throw the reserve and stuff. And I think that kind of mentality is a lot of the reason why SIV has this fearsome reputation, because people go and they push into stuff that they're not ready for and is way above their skill level because they think that, okay, I've got 6 flights and I just need to, I've got this like, 3,000 feet over the water and I got the voice on the radio and like, this is my moment. So let's bury the brakes and like go for broke and YOLO it and think they're going to, that's going to accelerate their progression. And
Okay,
there's some problems with that.
Yeah. So it's like, it's kind of talked about that full stalls are the reset button. As you said, the Control Alt Delete. I love that. And because people hear that, when they go to SIV, they really want to progress as quickly as they can to full stalls, thinking that if they do a couple full stalls at their SIV, then all of a sudden they're going to have this Control Alt Delete for their glider at any time in their back pocket. And that is inherently fraught with some misunderstandings, misconceptions. So what is the, if that's not the progression, what do you think is a safer progression or a more effective progression for people to work into? The really, one thing that I see you pointing at is like a more effective and reasonable use of people's SIV and SIV training time. What's the progression you're recommending here?
Well, I think it depends a lot on the person, where they're at, what their experience is and their goals and so on. So, for some people, full stalls is the prescription they need. They've done the other maneuvers, they have the prerequisites down, they, want to fly big air, they want to fly hot ships and, You know, I like the idea of every maneuver as a vehicle for learning. So it's not about the maneuver specifically, or at least on its own, but rather the process of training that maneuver enhances your skill set. So for sure, there are people that it's time for them to learn the stalls. They've done that stuff. And on the other far end of the spectrum, there's people who maybe they should never full stall in their career. You know, there's people who they don't want to fly midday. They are glass off only pilots. They're kind of afraid of paragliding in general. I don't think those people are going to get anything out of full stall in their glider other than like best case scenario, they, you know, get through it in one piece and they're
Yeah,
like, I'm
agreed.
never doing that again.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a number of maneuvers which are more important and need to be mastered first. So for me, the spiral dive is probably the number one that people should have. You know, people love that one as a descent technique, which, I mean, yes, it is effective for that, but I think more importantly, knowing how to get out of a spiral dive is really important. Knowing how to manage that energy, because so many times when people have problems in the wild, you know, they take a big collapse and, you know, something happens and then suddenly they're in a spiral dive, and if they don't know what to do, they either don't do enough and they just spiral and they auto rotate and hopefully, you know, throw the reserve in time, or they overreact and, you know, loop the glider or spin it or do all this crazy stuff. So like the spiral dive is probably, like, if you had to pick one maneuver to master, I'd say that would be the one.
I love
And
that.
yeah, and then what's also nice about the spiral dive is, you know, there's more nuances to it. So like the spiral dive with the fast exit, I think is probably like the best bang for your buck maneuver that you can train, because you get the spiral skills. You get used to exiting aggressively, which is what you need from an auto rotation. So like when people get auto rotation, like, oh, I'm stuck, and they just don't realize how hard you have to counter steer, you have to weight
Yeah.
shift, pull a lot of brake, and they're afraid to. But if you've practiced stopping a nose down spiral in a quarter turn, then you know what you have to do to stop an auto rotation.
Yeah.
But you also get, you know, this, suddenly you're dumping all this energy into this huge climb and the glider's behind you and you have to resist your brain telling you to get on the brakes, and you got to go hands up, and then you know, it shoots forward and you catch the surge. So it's a good way to practice controlled surges, which is an important skill. So you get all of these things in this relatively simple maneuver that's not that flashy. You know, people they want to go to SIV and they want to stall their glider and they want to like show the video of that. And, you know, a lot of SIV coaches want to be like, oh, I got my student to full stall. But like you learn so much out of just the fast spiral exit. And then
Yeah.
the third super important maneuver is the spin appreciation, or some people call it search for spin. And that's just the finding the spin point, letting the glider turn like 45 or 90 degrees or even up to 180, and then just shooting your hands up, doing nothing, letting the glider recover. And that one's so critical because, you know, most of the time people don't full stall their glider outright in the wild. I mean, I know there are exceptions of people that fly super deep in the brakes, but most of the time it starts as a spin and then they like, oh, I lost pressure. And then or it's like, oh, I don't want it to turn, I'm going to add the other brake, and then they stall it. So when they have experience finding the spin point, understanding what's going on, recognizing it right away, and building the habit to shoot their hands up and recover, like that one's critical. And I love that maneuver because it burns almost no altitude. I've had people that are really new, like really timid pilots, and they find that one to be one of the least intimidating maneuvers. You know, it was just kind of surprising because people are super afraid of spins. I think it's because of the way they're usually introduced. But you know, with this search for spin or spin appreciation, you're just like, oh, there it is, let it go, and you can just do it over and over and over. So I say, you know, those three are in my progression before the full stall even gets discussed.
I love this. I love this. And this sounds really sane to me, to begin with the view that full stalls aren't for everyone. SIV doesn't have to be for everyone. I've made that claim for a long time here. And then a flexible and unique approach for each person is really important, as well as just what are the most effective tools and things that people can practice that will really actually make them safer in the wild. And a full stall may have been over promised there. And I like your progression. And I think that, as we go to Turkey this October to do all of these Paragliding Academy, SIV, and acrobatics tours, I think that people can expect customized regimens, customized prescriptions for each person, lots of one-on-one time, and lots of repetition. Like you're talking about the spats, that the spin appreciation turns that take very little altitude. Man, in Turkey, we start at 5,000 feet. You just have so much time to train over and over and over. Lots of one-on-one time with instructors. I think it's going to be a great time. I'm stoked to go and get coaching from you as well. I'm looking to sharpen up my acro again. It's been a while since I've been training acro.
Yeah, I mean, I like to tell people the way I can describe Turkey is it's the world's greatest flight park. Like, imagine point of the mountain, but like 6,000 feet high and twice as big and surrounded by water.
Yeah, in an exotic and rich culture with
Yes.
beautiful olives and bread and cheese, and can't wait.
I guess one thing we forgot to touch on was the mythology of the reset button.
Okay.
Because there's plenty of
This is our wrap up. The mythology.
Mythology of the reset button. So, we talked about the progression for people, the rapid spiral legs and all that stuff. And then, where does the full stall actually fit in? So, we use the full stall and the, reset button when you're in a cascade, things are kind of messy. And then you're like, okay, we're going to kill the glider, put it into some configuration that we're familiar with, and then recover back to straight and level flight. Or sure, if you have a cravat, then you can use that to help clear the cravat. But it does not fix everything. And if you do it poorly, then you can very easily make it worse. So like a lot of people have this thing where they go and they learn the full stall, they do a couple and it goes well at SIV, and then they get in the wild, something happens, they're like, I should full stall my glider. And they have not
mastered it
enough to be able to pull that off. And then suddenly they're like, oh, now I have 8 riser twists and this is way worse. And so there is a time and place with the experience that you can use the full stall. But like I would say where I'm at my acro progression, I rarely go into backfly on purpose anymore. Sometimes if I blow a connection, then I'm like, oh, whoops, I'm in backfly on accident. And I just, okay, hands up, catch the surge, fly away. It's not my go-to toolbox. And I think there's sort of this uncanny valley where, you first learn the full stall and you're super afraid of it. And then you put all your reps in and you start to get it figured out. And now it's, it's your hammer and every problem's a nail type thing. And then once you spend enough time with all these maneuvers, then you're like, oh, I don't really need to stall the glider. I'm just gonna let it fly here. And I know it's about to shoot and I'm gonna catch the surge, and it's no big deal. So like I tell people that by the time you're ready to whip the full stall out on demand in the wild without notice, under pressure, over the ground, if
in your pod harness,
by the time you're at that level, you're probably not going to need to full stall. You probably have all these other tricks in the bag where you're just going to let it fly. So, you do need, it's important to learn. You gain a lot of finesse and motor control because you have to be like use these really small movements to control it. And you learn a lot about like when the glider is going to shoot, when it's not. But like I was talking about earlier, it's not so much about the maneuver, but how much you learn in the process of going through that.
Yeah. I love that. That's great. And I'm stoked to see people's progression as they move through these things. It brings me back to my own progression when I towed up over the water and did my first full stalls, and then went to a Kike and did my next 100 and first 50 helis. And I'm excited to help guide other people through the same kind of progression as they get scared and try and learn so much about glider handling. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
More videos soon.
Absolutely.